the sponsors, mostly from the families of the persons after whom the award has been named. And our sincerest thanks to those who comprise the Board of Judges, the committee for the awards. And maybe it is worthwhile to mention that every year the PhilAAST awardees are the ones selected by a special group in the Asian region, which names the top 100 researchers in Asia. And every year they pick the awardees of PhilAAST as the Filipino contributions to the 100. So palakpakan natin ang ating bagong 8 awardees. And in closing, actually, I am very happy to announce that for 2023, we will have an award for industry, science, and technology and innovation competitiveness. This is particular to a company, okay, that has shown that the Philippines can compete internationally in the name of science, technology, and innovation. And this will be the Francis Ferrer Award for Industry STI Competitiveness. This will be supported by the Francis Ferrer Foundation, led by his son, Perry Ferrer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. De La Peña. So this brings to a close the awarding ceremonies for this event. And again, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank personally Dr. Reynaldo Solidum, our new secretary, for staying until the end of this awarding ceremonies. Marami pong salamat. Thank you very much. And again, congratulations sa mga awardees. Congratulations particularly. Thank you very much sa mga sponsors for your generous offer. And also, I'd like to thank you personally yung mga support staff sa NAST, sa DOST, ITDI, lahat-lahat na ito. They really work hard behind the scenes, and I would like to thank all of them. And so now, mabuhay na tayo sa ating lahat, and I'd like to turn this over to Ida.
Mataas naman yung mga nagsalita. Okay. Thank you very much. And congratulations to our awardees, and thank you to the sponsors for these awards. Now, we will present the synthesis of the discussions from the 5 webinars which were held prior to this annual convention. The webinars tackled various topics related to this convention's theme, accelerating transformation for sustainable development through science, technology, innovation. For the webinar on health and well-being, may we call on Dr. Eva Maria C. Cuchonco de la Paz to deliver the synthesis.
The webinar on health and wellness intersected 3 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals: good health and well-being, zero hunger, and climate action. The first speaker, academician Dr. Euphemio Rasco Jr., gave a background on the stories that go into every grain of rice we put into our mouths. He presented the many challenges that our food systems face because of the disruptions in our natural systems that impact availability of food and subsequently affect our health. There are issues related to land use, energy and water issues, human settlements, and even food preference. In his presentation, he provided very doable solutions using strategies anchored on science, technology, and innovations, such as the concept of precision farming, renewable energy, increased farm and aquaculture biodiversity, and even recycling of water. All these, including a change in food preference that is data and value-driven, dictated by our genetic profile and personal values, these can all lead to a transformed food system. The second speaker, academician Dr. Glenn Gregorio, shared that Sharka's strategy is to change the mindset from the traditional farming mindset to long-term sustainable impact. Primary stakeholders and key partners are encouraged to introduce innovations and platforms that will benefit more people from the ground level to the national level. Recommendations related to policy innovations, institutional, social, technological, as well as conceptual innovations to promote food security were presented. These include strengthening academe, industry, government interconnectivity models that demonstrate a well-planned local food production. The country needs to invest on integrative studies assessing risk and uncertainties related to farm production and more customized approaches. The growing interest in agriculture needs to be sustained, and more agri-entrepreneurs, including the youth and women, have to be promoted. He also mentioned that our educational system should strengthen capacities of HEIs to reshape R&D for food system innovations towards food security and sovereignty, resilience, and poverty reduction. An enabling environment to engage in mutual learning and co-learning has to be developed. The third speaker in the Health and Wellness webinar, Dr. Carlos Primero Gundran, provided the conceptual framework of disasters. Hazards transforming to disasters depends on the event and the impact of events, as well as the amount of damage that dictates the needs to determine if it's an emergency or a disaster. Disasters usually result from a mismatch between needs and capacity. Everyone is just doing what is right in their own eyes. Disaster resiliency, on the other hand, allows decreasing vulnerability of society to future events. Priority should be placed on having a better response. Practice exercises are needed. Preparedness is crucial. The country needs to invest heavily in preparedness now more than ever to avoid wrong decisions during the actual disaster. Fortunately, the DOST's Science for Change program established the niche centers in the regions for R&D, or NICER, for Disaster Risk Reduction and Management in Health Center at the UP Manila. This is to improve the current disaster management capacity of emergency respondents and local government units. The webinar was also enriched by input from equally excellent reactors, Professor Reynaldo Estacio Jr. of the UP Manila College of Arts and Sciences, and Dr. Azucena Dayanghiram, DOH Assistant Secretary and Executive Director of the National Nutrition Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. De La Paz. Now, for the webinar on energy, let us hear Dr. Annabel V. Briones.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I will report on the concluded Integrated Energy Solutions Addressing Security and Sustainability webinar held on July 26, 2022. The webinar aims to present the status of the energy resources and address timely and relevant issues in this sector through in-depth discussions of potential and integrated solutions. The Philippines is one of the fastest developing economies in Southeast Asia that requires a larger energy supply to sustain economic growth. However, with the current worldwide trend on sustainability requiring acceleration to transition from a high carbon to a low carbon energy system and the recurring problems on energy supply triggered by external factors, energy security is also a major concern. Thus, this engagement is a good venue for crafting a concrete strategy to address sustainability and energy security concerns, which are the primary considerations in formulating and implementing integrated energy solutions in our country. Our resource speaker, Director Michael O. Sino Cruz of the Department of Energy, Energy Policy and Planning Bureau, presented important information on the situation of Philippine energy, the Philippine Energy Plan for 2020 up to 2040, and investment requirements. He emphasized the need to strengthen energy security and sustainable energy policies, build resilient infrastructure, and make the energy sector competitive. Alternative fuel sources to fossil fuels such as electric and biofuels may also be viable options for motor vehicles. New standards on oil and natural gas are also being set, particularly with Malampaya reporting a 13% decrease in production due to the depletion of reserves. He also mentioned the National Renewable Energy Program, the Green Energy Option Program, and the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act of 2019. Lastly, he discussed nuclear energy, EO 164, about the utilization of atomic energy coals for developing strategies, including using smaller power grids and allotting about $153 billion in energy investment. The panel of reactors, Dr. Art Romero, geoscientist affiliate, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory of Berkeley, California, Engineer Alexander Ablasa, Chief Executive Officer, Climergy, and Co-Chair, Asia Pacific ESCO Industry Alliance Philippines, and Engineer Rogelio G. Reyes, President of Bosses ng Consumer Alliance Incorporated, provided comments and insights. The perspective given by Dr. Romero emphasized the importance of an international point of view when it comes to energy efficiency and how it can be applied in the Philippines. Policies in the Philippines are also commendable, according to him. Oil exploration is another concern since fossil fuel amasses a large portion of the energy mix, and we should look for a more indigenous fossil fuel source like in Malampaya. Energy sources may also be diversified, discussing the pros and cons of nuclear, solar, wind, ocean, wave power, and geothermal energy sources. In the initiatives toward e-mobility, the government should focus on energy efficiency in the transport sector and not just on fuel transition, since energy efficiency will have a vital role in energy conservation and decarbonization. Engineer Ablasa focused on energy efficiency programs as he viewed such programs as infrastructure assets as implicitly recognized in RA 11285 through the procurement scheme. He mentioned that based on the presentation of Mr. Sino Cruz, DOE is slowly integrating energy efficiency to clean energy scenarios. However, we are not yet to fully integrate renewable energy in the energy mix alongside coal, geothermal, among others. An aggressive approach should be given to setting realistic targets and ensuring that policy and capital are behind them. The Philippines holds the potential to conserve million tons of oil equivalent via energy-saving practices. According to Engineer Reyes, the main concerns of consumers on energy are price and reliability. The Filipinos have been suffering from very expensive electricity rates and reliable electricity supply. These are due to the Philippines' reliance on imported oil supply and the uneven distribution of power to smaller electric cooperatives, resulting in insufficient power supply in some areas. He said solar energy is a good alternative for power generation, aside from being environment friendly. Still, the current investment cost and reports of malfunctions of appliances make such technologies not quite attractive for households. Thank you and stay safe always.
Thank you very much, Dr. Briones. Dr. Asuncion B. de Guzman will give the synthesis for our webinar on sustainable communities.
Good morning, everyone. The first in the series of virtual webinars that PhilAAST conducted in the past 2 months is titled Climate Resilience and Sustainable Communities, which was held on July 19, 2022. I will be sharing with you a brief synthesis of this webinar. We had 3 talks during this webinar. The first was from Dr. Del Velasco, titled State of the Philippine Climate Resilience Program, a Vision Toward a Carbon Neutral Future. And the second talk was given by Dr. Emma Porio, Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, a Resilience Toolkit Toward Sustainable Communities. And the third talk was given by Engineer Edward Ryan Citureda on sustainable local initiatives and addressing climate change challenges. The 6th assessment report of the IPCC had shown that there are 4 types of global climate risks that we are about to face in the future, namely heat stress, water scarcity, food security, and flood risk. In addressing climate change risks and impacts, this would involve either adaptation or mitigation measures. Adaptation has been observed across all sectors and regions, and this has generated multiple benefits. For example, transforming cities into resilient systems, and this would involve a combination of efforts and approaches such as nature-based engineering approaches. We call this the soft and hard engineering, establishing green and blue spaces and urban agriculture, and also looking at social safety nets for disaster management. In the webinar, we featured 2 resilience initiatives in the Philippines. And the first one is a resilience toolkit towards sustainable communities that has been developed under the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines project of the Ateneo de Manila University and the Manila Observatory. And the second initiative is related to local government leadership in climate change adaptation, particularly towards sustainable, innovative, cost-effective flood monitoring and early warning system of Bayawan City, Negros Oriental, that is a flood-prone area in the Visayas. Adaptation, however, has its limits, and that's why mitigation of climate change risk is needed. Now, past and current efforts and all the COP commitments have shown that we are not on track to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius increase. Now, what are the implications of this information for the Philippines? And will we ever be carbon neutral? Now, this is a difficult process, but maybe not impossible. First, it would require harmonizing the climate resilient development with local and national plans and agenda. And of course, the adoption of 2 approaches, adaptation and mitigation measures to combat climate change. Now, the key messages of those 3 talks are the following. There is cumulative scientific evidence that shows climate change is a threat to human well-being and the health of the planet. And any further delay in the concerted global action will miss a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future. Now, safeguarding biodiversity and ecosystems is fundamental to climate resilient development. Dr. Porio warned that investing in climate and disaster resilience is a necessity rather than a choice for vulnerable communities. And Engineer Tureda also shared that LGUs can develop innovative climate change resilience programs even with moderate budget. And what it takes for the LGU is commitment. Now, after the 3 talks, we also heard discussion by our panel of discussants, namely Dr. Rex Victor Cruz and Dr. Felino Pilansigan, and these are the main points of the discussion. Dr. Cruz believes that there is a need to adopt a ridge to reef approach toward climate resilience. But this is, of course, not a walk in the park. It's challenging and also difficult to achieve. But there are enabling policies and instruments that are in place to promote integrated approaches. Achieving climate resilient sustainable communities, according to Dr. Lansigan, would mean reducing vulnerabilities to climate hazards, reducing exposure, increasing adaptive capacity, and implementing a combination of mitigation and adaptation measures. There have been a lot of initiatives, but what is needed is for increased collaboration among stakeholders to attain the best combinations of strategies and climate actions. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. De Guzman. This time, let us hear Dr. Reynaldo V. Bora present the synthesis on water, land, and soil resources webinar.
Good morning. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. I would like to share that we had a very interesting discussion on sustainable utilization of very important natural resources, water, land, and soil, on the information provided to us by well-known experts and active researchers in the field and our very knowledgeable panelists. Last August 16, Dr. Patricia Ann Sanchez, an agricultural engineer with research interests in environmental hydrology, climate change impacts, adaptation, mitigation, disaster risk reduction and management, water resources management, extreme events hydrological modeling, and crop modeling, led the discussion on the topic sustainable utilization and management of water resources for domestic and agricultural use. She shared with us valuable information about water security and the different legal instruments governing water use, as well as the water-related government agencies involved in its regulation. Case studies on domestic water use and for agricultural purposes in different places in the Philippines were also presented. Various approaches and technologies on sustainable utilization and management of water resources for domestic and agricultural use were also discussed. The discussion on integrated natural resources and environmental management was led by Dr. Juan Pulhin. He currently chairs the UPLB Interdisciplinary Studies Center for Integrated Natural Resources and Environmental Management, or UPLB-NREM. He discussed the integrated natural resources and environmental management in the Asian and Philippine context and emphasized the high biodiversity in these places, which unfortunately are threatened by overexploitation due to increase in human population, aside from natural causes like climate change. The significant decline in the Philippine forest cover was also noted, affecting the ecosystem services that they usually provide. Recommendations were also given in the form of a landscape approach in NREM to address the problems. Efficient coordination and collaboration among government agencies and various stakeholders were recommended. The implications of NREM to science, technology, and innovation were also presented. On the other hand, Professor Patrick Rocamora, an assistant professor in soil conservation and management from UP Los Baños, and the current division head of the Division of Soil Science, Agricultural Systems Institute under the College of Agriculture and Food Science, spearheaded the conversation on soil nutrient management towards a more productive and sustainable crop production, the third topic of the webinar. He shared with us different approaches and technologies for soil nutrient management towards a more productive and sustainable crop production, like soil test kit, leaf color charts, -1 element technique, and nutrient management. He identified 3 major factors affecting production: management, seeds, and farm inputs. He emphasized that water is one of the most important inputs since plants cannot absorb minerals without a carrier, which is water. He also stressed the importance of soil by citing U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's quote, "The nation that destroys its soil destroys itself." Lastly, we heard a brilliant presentation from a geologist and professor at UP Diliman Marine Science Institute. He is also a member of the National Academy of Science and Technology. Dr. Fernando Seringan discussed the importance of communication, education, public awareness, and policy review to improve coastal erosion management in the Philippines. He presented cases of coastal erosion from different places in the Philippines, which could be due to natural causes or human activities. Dr. Siringan emphasized the need for appropriate policy to address the coastal erosion concerns. The various information materials were found to be effective in raising the awareness of the public regarding the causes of coastal erosion and its management. Efforts were made to reach out to students and teachers, as well as the policymakers and the concerned agencies, particularly the DENR. Our panel of reactors, Director Emilito Bagsit of DOST Calabarzon, Dr. Marianne Asadera, Director of PICARD's Marine Resources Research Division, and Dr. Ernesto Brown, Director of PICARD's Socioeconomics Research Division, provided additional valuable insights on the sustainable utilization of our precious resources, water, land, and soil, and the interconnectedness of the different factors, both natural and man-made, was emphasized. The discussion also focused on how science and technology and the current DOST-PICARD initiatives can address the problems. The importance of appropriate policy was also emphasized. That sums up the 3-hour webinar on sustainable utilization of water, land, and soil resources. Thank you. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Dr. Bora. The last webinar focused on digital revolution, and may we call on Director Luningning Samarita Domingo for the synthesis.
Morning to our honored guest, Secretary Reynaldo, to PhilAAST President, Reynaldo, to our former Secretary Cotabato, and to all our friends and colleagues from the science community. I'm presenting the report, the synthesis, for the 5th webinar on the digital revolution. The welcome remarks was delivered by PhilAAST President Reynaldo, and we also have the message from former Secretary Philippine. All talked about the significance of digital revolution in the different sectors of the society and its impact on how we do things, especially in the areas of communication. As in the past webinar series, we come up with different recommendations on attaining sustainable development goals. For this webinar, it covers SDG number 9, Industrial Innovation and Infrastructure, SDG number 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions, and SDG number 17, Partnerships for the Goal. We have 3 speakers and 2 reactors. The first speaker is the Secretary of the Department of Information and Communication Technology, Attorney Ivan Chan. He talked about how DICT becomes key driver of change in the shift towards a robust and accessible ecosystem. According to him, the main critical work and role of the DICT is making massive efforts in the advancement of the country's digital agenda and mission. They also continue to build the nation's digital infrastructure, e-governance, cybersecurity, and many more areas. The Secretary also shared that the ICT is expediting the implementation of national programs to have free Wi-Fi to all sites in order to provide all Filipinos, especially those in remote areas, the Wi-Fi access. The Secretary also stated that providing connectivity is essential, for he believes this is the gateway of ICT opportunities, the starting point of digital revolution by building digital communities that are innovative, self-sufficient, and thriving business destinations in rural areas and provinces. He also declared that the ICT will maintain to build digital landscapes to inspire people's interest that will fuel the passion in innovation, which will foster digital ecosystem. Secretary Uy looked forward to the collaboration with LGUs, both private and public institutions to establish flourishing, vibrant digital ecosystem, and together can build digitized nation equipped for the next digital transformation. Our second speaker, Dr. Francisco Sandejas, founder and CEO of Centro Digital Education, talked about the journey in education, which has a goal of digitally transforming our educational system through consultative relationship with partners, build platforms that connect members of the educational ecosystem that involve the teachers, students, schools, decision makers, publishers, and even supporters from home. He also introduced the innovation ecosystem and pointed out the importance of funding, especially for the hardware development. He discussed 3 phases, starting with phase A, conceptualization stage, which include knowing the problem, providing the customers and concerns, and developing a unique solution. For phase B, prototype development, he pointed out the importance of providing the customer with minimum viable product, which includes teacher training and working with the agencies like DepEd and other schools in creative plans towards digital transformation. Lastly, phase 3 is about sustainability planning, which is all about making the solution sustainable. This needs strong financial support and a great market availability. Our next speaker, Attorney Samuel Matulog, President, ICT Davao Incorporated, presents the consumer's perspective on development and adaptation of digital revolution amidst disruptions. This presentation was divided into 4 areas: economy, access, platforms, and remote work. He first discussed the 3 generations of e-commerce of Philippine economy. Currently, we are in the 3rd generation called Q-commerce, where we use mobile app for the selection of items, and this micro-scale type of e-commerce is very encouraging in the Philippines and create more micro-entrepreneurs. It is sent to the current demographic profiles and standing of the Filipinos in digital access. He shared that the main beneficiaries of better broadband access are those who work in BPO industries and doing freelance online workers who are grateful for this opportunity. He raised several issues for central concerns of these workers, such as lack of communication, feeling of isolation, problem with setting boundaries of work and personal time, and difficulty with collaboration due to hard to read nonverbal cues. He stated that the digital revolution remains inaccessible to most Filipinos as they don't have the income to buy gadgets to access the broadbands. The 2 panelists, Dr. Timba, for instance, talked about understanding the divide and its implications to the society. They also discussed the barriers to awareness and perception of ICT, limited internet use, including internet services that are not available in the area. He pointed out that certain segments of the population have better internet access than the rest. Engineer Alex Wood, PhilAAST Vice President, who is also a panelist, said that ICT service to people becomes faster and more direct because of ICT, especially in the areas of education and business. He also mentioned about the advantage and disadvantages of working online. For our synthesis, we recognize that the fundamental digital transformation of digital revolution services, being heavily driven by developments in ICT, is underway in the various aspects of our lives. The pandemic has become an instrument towards the digital transformation of our country, integrated in the society that is used in a variety of sectors. This altered our behavior and social interaction, and certainly an ecosystem for new information era was created. Third, Digital revolution is here, and transformation are essentially to the growth and development of our country. There is a question, how do we start? We plan, have insights, and we will talk about our vision. We plan, there should be a plan for success so that we do not end in failure, as mentioned by one of our resource persons. We are aware of our needs. Connectivity must be accessible to everyone. Digital tools to build and strengthen our Filipino nation is needed. Revolutions for all Filipinos. We have to educate all Filipinos. Create more experts. Funding support is needed. Research and development is needed. Policy intervention is very much needed. Challenges is how to reach the most vulnerable. Basic education is very important. Digital revolution remains inaccessible to most Filipinos because of financial constraints usually. Recommendation, media which presents a unique challenge to the consumers should be involved. And data privacy is also a concern. Everybody will benefit from the digital transformation. We benefit from the ease in communication. We can have webinars in Zoom with meeting face-to-face, but we need a collaborative effort. Partnerships from all sectors, like the government, the academy, private and public sectors, towards achieving a sustainable digital revolutions and creating digital cities, which will lead to a digital nation and digital Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ningning. I would again like to thank Dr. De La Paz, Dr. Briones, Dr. De Guzman, Dr. Bora, and Director Samarita Domingo for giving us the comprehensive summary of the discussions of the webinars. There is an announcement that we would like to make at this point. We are strongly encouraging the winners of this year's awards to be members of PhilAAST. I am sure you will be a very big contribution to attaining the objectives of the organization. So we would like you to be one of us. Thank you. You will heed our request for you. Okay. Now, let us proceed to the plenary session on sustainable development programs. Our first speaker is Dr. Eufemio T. Rasco Jr. He is a retired professor of the University of the Philippines, Mindanao, and an academician of the National Academy of Science and Technology of the DOST. He has been conferred the title of Professor Emeritus by the UP Board of Regents, and prior to joining UP Mindanao, he served as a faculty member and an official of UP Los Baños and as a scientist in agricultural organizations. Would like to hear his talk now.
Good morning. My original assignment for this talk is food security. But I believe that food security is just one of the dimensions of a more complex, multi-role food system. The food system's ultimate goal is not only food security, but equally important are linked issues, namely farmers' income, consumer nutrition, environmental protection, and nurturing of the Filipino food culture. In short, it's not only about quantity of food, but the quality of food and the impact of the system that brings food to the consumer table. The existing food system needs transformation, not merely incremental change. This is because using all the vital metrics, the existing food system is dysfunctional. The nation is food insecure. Farmers do not earn enough to support a decent way of life. Consumers are chronically ill because of poor nutrition. The environment is suffering. And most importantly, the Filipino food culture that has sustained previous generations of Filipinos is fast disappearing. I will not bore you with the statistics, as Dr. Google and Dr. PSA can do a better job. This is a representation of the NAST vision of the Philippine food system that has won acclaim in the 2020 Rockefeller Food System Vision Prize. I can proudly claim on behalf of the team that it is the most thoroughly vetted food system vision for the Philippines, as it had to compete with more than 1,300 entries from 4,000 organizations representing 139 countries. It landed in the top 1% after judging by a panel of close to 100 international experts. It's like we were silver medalists in the food system Olympics. Regrettably, this is one medal we do not cover in the mass media. Thus, very few Filipinos know enough of it to support it. What makes it different from other visions? First, it is a circular food system. Energy and materials are recycled. Second, the consumer, not the farmer, the trader, or government, is at the center. We envision that the consumer will provide the leadership in transforming the food system. How? By decisions he makes on a daily basis. What food to eat and how it is brought to her dinner table. These decisions will have a direct impact on decisions by farmers on what, when, and how to grow food. It will have an impact on activities of industry and government as well. To give you a taste of what is to come, we will probably not have problems with sugar and rice in the future because we envision that our consumers will need less of this. A vision is useless without a plan. The plan shown in this slide is a 461-page document, inclusive of appendices, which was prepared by a team of experts from CIRCA, ADB, FAO, and DA after 1 year of intensive multi-sectoral consultations. It is our hope that the current Secretary of Agriculture will find time to study and subsequently implement it, because DA has a leadership role in its implementation. Nevertheless, DA alone cannot implement this plan. It requires support from other branches of government: LGU, DOST, DOH, DSW, DMO, others. Indeed, DA may find it rather awkward to campaign, for example, for reduced consumption of sugar or rice, as the plan calls for, because doing so may be perceived as an admission of failure. On the other hand, the healthcare sector may find it uncomfortable to prescribe food as medicine, as doctors are supposed to prescribe drugs, surgery, or radiation. Thus, the plan envisions an IATF-style body that will deal with the food system crisis in a manner that it becomes a whole of society concern. In our mind, this crisis has far greater long-term impact to this nation than COVID or any other crisis in recent memory. What are some of the key ideas of this plan? Due to time constraints, let me focus on only three. First, promoting diversity on the dinner plate with emphasis on locally adapted species of plants, animals, and seafood. The traditional Filipino diet is a good template because of the diversity of our food cultures. Second, doubling of per capita consumption of fish and other products of the aquatic environment. We need to learn to eat seaweeds. This is consistent with our cultural food patterns and the archipelagic nature of the Philippines. Third, diversity of farming and fishing activities to support the diversity on the dining table, increase the income of farmers and fisherfolk, and protect the farm environment from the adverse effects of intensive monoculture. Diversified farm activities will include production of inputs and value adding of products. Any transformation is expected to encounter serious challenges from society in general, whose comfort zones will be threatened. Among the challenges are first, the plan requires systems thinking. This is not easy for a society that has been led to think of food as a problem of GA, health as a problem of DOH, environment as a problem of DENR, and nutrition as a problem of FNRI. In fact, these problems are interrelated and require holistic solutions. Second, the plan calls for a transformative change, changes in structure and functions of organizations, such as when a larva is transformed into a butterfly. This is not easy for a bureaucracy that is used to seeing change as purely growth in mass, like making the larva grow until it bursts, never becoming a butterfly. Thus, we have always associated food security with rice security. This is a political definition and not scientifically accurate. Food is not rice alone. Our plan calls for a more science-oriented concept of food, one that is characterized by diversity and balance rather than uniformity. It calls for less rice and bread, more alternative staples, grain legumes, fish, milk, vegetables, and fruits. We also envision a food system with a multidimensional role, not only ensuring that affordable food is available at all times. The food system must nurture its numerous stakeholders, not the least the farmers and consumers, and protect the natural capital, which are the soil, water, and biodiversity, the health of which depends the system's continuity. The plan calls for the consumer to provide the leadership in food system transformation. But what if the consumer is the problem? How can we convince the farmer to plant more grain legumes or the fisherman to catch more fish if what the consumer wants is rice, sugar, pork and beef, noodles, and canned food? Thus, the plan looks forward to changing the consumer over one generation or a 30-year period. Over this period, we see a synchronized transformation of the dinner plate and the farm. Among the strategies are education at all levels. We propose to include concepts of the food system and its vital role in the nation's well-being, starting from primary grades up to higher education. Children must know that it is part of their civic duty to make the proper food choices. So it's not only about gardening, as before. On the other hand, agriculturists must be trained to be comfortable with diversified farming, which is the exact opposite of the specialized education currently implemented. Medical practitioners must know the role of food in healthcare and be familiar with the nutritional and functional role of food. Second, feeding programs. This may cover disaster relief, school feeding, subsidy for low-income consumers, or institutional use by governments such as hospitals, military, and police. The planetary health diet and traditional Filipino foods are good templates instead of noodles and canned food or junk food. The planetary health diet is a pattern of food consumption that addresses both consumer and environmental health. So far, it is the only science-based recommendation of this nature. On the other hand, traditional Filipino foods are more diverse than what we now have. Unlike popular belief, it's not only rice and fish. Third, mass media campaigns targeting the middle class. This is the sector that has the motivation and means to be more adventurous with food choices. Their food choices can more easily be copied by the lower income sectors. 4, Flex PhD app. This refers to a collaborative project under development by NAST, DOST, and CIRCA, working with private sector partners. Its visible product is an app that can be used during using the cell phone as a tool for making data and values-driven food choices. I previously argued that the consumer is the key to food system transformation. Our food industries created a food system that has trained the consumer to base her food choices mainly on price, convenience, and taste. This explains the progressive reduction in diversity of food and proliferation of fast food restaurants. The training process took at least one generation, and it will take at least the same length of time to reverse it. While formal education is an effective tool for changing food habits, it takes time for it to be implemented and takes more time to have an impact. On the other hand, feeding programs have limited reach. We need other tools. One tool that will require considerable inputs from STI is the development of an app that can be used by consumers as an aid in making data and values-driven food choices, in addition to convenience, price, and taste. We refer to this as the Flex PhD app. Flex to mean food is life, exemplified. PhD to mean planetary health diet. The idea takes off from the science of nutrigenomics, the scientific study of the interaction of nutrition and genes, especially with regard to the prevention or treatment of disease. Apps based on nutrigenomics are presently in experimental use in developed countries. They require genomic data, which is provided by DNA labs working on saliva samples. And the output is a set of recommendations about what food to avoid and what food to eat. The Flex PhD app will build on this concept by considering other sets of data that reflect biological needs, financial capability, and more significantly, values such as nurturing the environment, local culture, and local farmers. For this app to work, we will need a lot of data, among which are nutritional and functional qualities of local crops, fish and seafoods, poultry and livestock, seasonal and regional availability of crops, animals and seafoods, environmental impact of the system that brings the various foodstuff to the consumer table. Among these are land and water use, greenhouse gas emissions, farming practices such as use of fertilizers and pesticides, and marketing practices such as the use of plastics for food packaging. And lastly, economic impact to the rural areas of the system that brings the various foodstuff to the consumer table. For example, locally produced brown rice milled by farmer himself and sold directly to consumers will have a greater economic impact to rural communities than white rice that is imported from Thailand. Many of the required data are not yet generated. Thus, we need to invest in R&D to produce them. As for the app itself, our team, consisting of members from NAST, CIRCA, and PICARD, is organizing a nationwide open competition to generate the app. We expect to launch this contest in November 2022. We are realistic enough to recognize that this app may not be perfect for many years, as it takes a lot of time to generate the needed data for the app to work. However, publicity associated with app development will be very useful in educating the public about the impact of their food choices on the environment, local farmers, and local culture. As the saying goes, the journey is as important as the destination. In summary, food security is just one of the dimensions of a more complex, multi-role food system. The food system's ultimate goal is not only food security, but equally important are linked issues, namely farmers' income, consumer nutrition, environmental protection, and nurturing of the Filipino food culture. The existing food system needs transformation, not merely incremental change. This is because using all the vital metrics, the existing food system is dysfunctional. The nation is food insecure. Farmers do not earn enough to support a decent way of life. Consumers are chronically ill because of poor nutrition. The environment is suffering. And most importantly, the Filipino food culture that has sustained previous generations of Filipinos is fast disappearing. A NAST-led team prepared the vision, and a CIRCA-led team prepared a plan for transformation, covering a 30-year period or one generation, because we believe that it takes this long to overcome the challenges. The greatest challenge is for the consumers and farmers to accept diversity in a synchronized manner. Society and the STI community must face this challenge squarely through a coordinated approach. An important tool is a cell phone-based app, the Flex PhD, the development of which require more support for R&D and to generate the needed data. The Flex PhD will guide consumers in making data and values-driven decisions. Thank you for your kind attention. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rasco, for your talk on food security. Let us now proceed to the second speaker, who will talk on governance, Governor Reynaldo Tamayo Jr. A two-term governor of South Cotabato and the newly elected president of the League of Provinces of the Philippines, we would like to welcome Governor Tamayo for his paper.
It is my great honor and privilege as your invited speaker in governance, as you have your 71st Annual Convention of the Philippine Association for the Advancement of Science and Technology, with the theme Accelerating Transformations for Sustainable Development through Science, Technology, and Innovation. We believe that technology sparks a turning point for promoting participative governance to the different stakeholders across the globe. As we gear towards digitalization of our local government, systems, processes, and procedures in delivering the basic social services to our constituents, addressing emerging problems such as COVID-19 pandemic and other health concerns became much easier with the help of technology.
South Cotabato, the land of the dream weavers. South Cotabato is the administrative and educational center in the key business hub of Region 12 or the Soxargen region. It is one of the 4 provinces located in the southern part of the region, with a total land area of about 3,705.89 square kilometers. South Cotabato is a haven of more than 900,000 people. It is composed of 2 congressional districts and has 1 component city and 10 municipalities, with a total of 199 barangays. The biggest town in terms of land area is the municipality of Lake Cebu, which is geographically dominated by mountainous areas with narrow strips of flat land and home to our tilapia-rich lakes. Famous 7 falls with zip line and home to the dream weavers, the Tibolis. The smallest municipality is Santo Niño. The province's rice granary, which is contrary, does not have the mountains, but a vast fertile flatland suitable for crop production. The province has a better diversified economy. However, agriculture and agro-industries remain the primary economic drivers of the province. Agriculture is regarded as the most dominant sector since South Cotabato is still basically agriculture-based with about half of its total land area utilized for agricultural production. South Cotabato is steadfast in strengthening the tourism industry and in establishing the land of the dream weavers to be one of the top tourism destinations in the country. Amidst pandemic, the tourism industry begins to thrive, which draws so much attention from both local and foreign tourists. Some of the most visited tourism destinations are Strawberry Guyabano Farm in Tupi, Magsangyaw Land of Paradise also in Tupi, Emilius Kawa and Flower Garden in Lake Cebu, Lake Colon of Tiboli, and 7 Falls of Lake Cebu, among others. Our efforts have gained us strong recognition in the international scene as 2 of our tourist destinations, Lake Colon of Tiboli and Lake Cebu, have been included in the top 100 sustainable destinations in the world by Green Destinations. The province also has a growing multitude of quality academic institutions such as the Notre Dame of Marble University, the University of the Philippines Manila School of Health Sciences Mindanao Extension Campus, and the Philippine Science High School that produce highly competent professionals. On our trade and investment, South Cotabato is richly endowed with nature's blessings, having fertile soil, great mineral resources, typhoon-free climate, abundant agricultural products and agribusiness opportunities, world-class tourism sites and tourism facilities. This and more make the province the perfect investment haven and tourism capital of Region 12. Being one of the first-class provinces in the country, the province maintains a business-friendly environment through the effective coordination of the local government with national government agencies to create and sustain support facilities, services for micro, small, medium, and large enterprises alike. The increase in the amount of capitalization of new businesses was boosted by one of the biggest solar power firms in the country, the NV Vogue of Philippine Solar Energy One Incorporated, which invested the first 500 million in the establishment of a 13 billion 8-hectare solar power plant in Barangay Centrala, Surala, with the capacity to generate 5 megawatts to 6.25 megawatts of power, adequate to serve at least 100 households. Encouraged by the favorable investment climate, NV Vogue purchased an additional 80 hectares of lot in Tantangan, South Cotabato for its expansion to produce 50 megawatts more adequate to power the entire region. On our proactive initiatives, there are 3 active councils chaired by the governor, which take care of development programs and projects, disaster risk management, and peace concerns. These are the Provincial Development Council, Provincial Peace and Order Council, and the Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. The province has a kapihan sa Kapitolyo, wherein programs, projects, and the latest initiatives are presented and discussed together with the media people. This is aired in all radio stations in the province, both AM and FM. On quality management system and innovations. The Human Resource Management Office was created through Provincial Ordinance Number 34 Series of 2016 Among the innovations of the office include the approval of Personnel Selection Board, internal rules and regulations, the revised hiring and promotion system, and the systems of ranking position and applicants rating form. Other than this, the upgrading of hiring and promotion system manual and the review of job description and qualification standard manuals are set to clear level of standards in the qualifications and to improve the personnel selection process. In fast tracking and securing office transactions, procurement and financial monitoring system was implemented together with the four new programs: road information system and socio-economic and physical profile system, purchase order system, and provincial engineering office local document locator system. To align or conform with the ISO, the province initiated the following: local area network, computerized bidding process, personal selection and performance program, computerized real property tax administration system, and award system. To ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of the provincial government employees and office performance, South Cotabato is among the few agencies in the region taking the lead in the implementation of the Strategic Performance Management System, or SPMS. The province is the first province in SOX region that achieved Maturity 2 accreditation on performance management system as evaluated by the Civil Service Commission. South Cotabato consistently ranked first among the first income class provinces in Region 12 in the Real Property Tax Collection Program. Recognitions and awards for best practices would be the most tangible indicators of good governance. Our best practices, awards, and recognitions humbly speak for what we have already achieved in the province in terms of good governance. Among the recognitions are presentation of the South Cotabato COVID-19 Contact Tracing System, or SCCTS, dubbed as great example of cross-sector collaboration and thorough consultation. Before the Open Government Partnership, or OGP Leaders Summit of the United Nations General Assembly, or UNGA, on September 24, 2020. The convergence effort of the provincial government, which implements various programs and projects to improve their economic status, was recognized through the giving of plaque of appreciation and certificate of commendation by TESDA and DILG during the legacy recognition ceremony on the joint RTF-LCAC. No less than TESDA Secretary Isidro S. Da Peña handed over the awards. On interlocal government relations, the province is the first in the country to have clustered sanitary landfills located in Surala, comprising 6 municipalities, and in Pulomolok in partnership with Dole Philippines and the municipality of Tupi. For COVID-19 response, SCCTS is localized web and mobile-based application developed for the efficient and expeditious contact tracing of confirmed COVID-19 positive patients. It is a digitized or electronic logbook system that aims to contain the transmission of COVID-19, increase confidence of local government units on the safety of their population in reopening and restarting economic activities during or beyond the general community quarantine. A CCTS card, which is generated upon registration, is issued by the PGSC to resident or visitor within the territorial jurisdiction of the province of South Cotabato. It serves as an electronic logbook that needs to be scanned when entering the premises of the government offices or private establishments for the purpose of recording the date and time of entry or visit, and which bears the holder's name, address, identification number, and a uniquely assigned QR code. In the same way, the provincial government of South Cotabato, through an ordinance enacted by the Sangguniang Panlalawigan, has mandated the registration and use of SCCTS scanners to all national and local government offices, including all government-managed or owned facilities and economic enterprises in the province, all private businesses, establishments, and entities to include religious and educational institutions, and all modes of public transport or public utility vehicles operating in the province. Once registered, these establishments shall download the SCCTS mobile application. All CCTS cards of persons who are entering these registered establishments or offices shall be scanned using the mobile application. The system was planned, designed, and developed by the local information technology experts of South Cotabato, who are the same time bona fide employees of the provincial government. It is the first system in the country that does not require smartphones and or internet connection on the part of the residents or citizens, and the governor himself instructed that the provincial government is willing and open to share the system to the rest of the country free of any charge. Public-private partnership between provincial government of South Cotabato and DAP-MC. The provincial government of South Cotabato had signed a memorandum of understanding with DAP-MC for hosting the COVID-19 testing center, which is an accredited biosafety level 2 laboratory, dubbed as first PPP for a COVID-19 testing laboratory in the country. The partnership is beneficial and less costly for the province in terms of putting up a testing center, which could cost around 50 million pesos. The testing center will be jointly manned by trained personnel from the provincial government and DAP-MC. The provincial government will provide the necessary supplies and personal protective equipment, while the hospital will shoulder the electricity and other related expenses. The Gene Expert machine has a capacity of 4 modules every hour or around 30 RT-PCR tests for an 8-hour operation. The processing and release of the test results will only take at least 8 hours, a significant improvement from the turnaround time of 3 days to a week for the testing samples at the Southern Philippines Medical Center in Davao City and the Cotabato Regional Medical Center in Cotabato City. SGH as isolation center to treat mild to moderate COVID-19 patients. SGH was utilized as isolation center to treat mild to moderate COVID-19 patients and to decongest the South Cotabato Provincial Hospital in Coronadal City. The facility, which is under the operation and control of the provincial government, was designated as a regional hospital for Soxurgen through Republic Act 11102 signed by the President Rodrigo Duterte on October 26, 2018. Its main building was converted by the province in April 2020 into a dedicated treatment facility for moderate to severe COVID-19 patients, with an initial capacity of 20 beds and a complete intensive care unit setup, including a ventilator. IT-related programs. The Provincial Information Office Information Technology Division has proposed several projects for 2023 to 2025. These are the proposed projects. Reinstallation of LAN or network in the provincial capital, purchase of backup security IT equipment for disaster recovery, purchase of IT service units, subscription of Zoom as a virtual platform in the conduct of the provincial government's virtual meeting and other activities, PLGU centralized email subscription, enhancement or modernization of the provincial government e-financial system, and subscription of software license for application development. These are the ongoing priority projects of the Provincial Information Office Information Technology Division. Enhancement of existing in-house application development such as payroll, HRIS, procurement system, real property tax, billing and collections. Enhancement of SCPH in-house application development such as queuing system. Cabling and networking infrastructure project for main building, docu-tracking system, installation and configuration of new PABX system, and integration of internet connectivity to have sophisticated and dedicated internet service for the province.
These and more are the countless initiatives the province of South Cotabato has initiated through the years. Welcome to the land of the three rivers, our home, your destination.
South Cotabato, angat ka sa lahat.
Thank you very much, Governor Tamayo, for giving us an overview of your successful programs for South Cotabato. Our third topic is on entrepreneurship. The co-authors of Science for Success, Professor De La Peña, Ms. Maria Esther Faliosco Bautista, will share with us their valuable experience concerning entrepreneurship, and our two speakers will be introduced by the other co-author, Ms. Rubina Y. Gokongwei Pe. But before I call on Ms. Gokong Weipe to introduce our two speakers, let me first introduce her to you. Ms. Gokong Weipe is a University of the Philippines graduate, as well as a New York University alumna. Born to the late John Robinson Gokong Wei Jr. and Elizabeth Gokong Wei, she continues the family legacy through the second largest multi-format retailer in the Philippines, Robinson's Retail Holdings Incorporated, as President and Chief Executive Officer. Let us now hear the introduction prepared by Ms. Pei for our two speakers, Maret and Prof. Boy.
Good day, everyone. Before anything, I would like to congratulate the officers and members of the Philippine Association for the Advancement of Science and Technology on your 71st Annual Convention. I have the privilege of introducing former DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña, or SecBoy for short, and my UP batchmate and my co-UP Maroons men's basketball team fan, Maret Poliosco Bautista. Maret's father, Seferino Poliosco, was DOST Secretary in the 90s, and SecBoy was his director. While Maret had known SecBoy for 30 years through her father, Secretary Poliosco, I met SecBoy for the first time in 2019 in very funny circumstances. One day in 2019, I received an email from someone who claimed to represent DOST, informing me that they were coming out with a book on MSMEs and that SecBoy wanted me to be the editor. I did not know anyone from DOST, so the first thing that entered my head was that it was a scam. I forwarded the email to Maret and requested her to check with DOST. She came back saying, "Lagot ako. It wasn't a scam. It was truly an invite from SecBoy. I was so embarrassed that I invited SecBoy for dinner at our Chinese restaurant in Crown Plaza Hotel. The happy ending was that Maret became a co-author of the book entitled Science for Success. Here it is. And after that, another book called Science for Innovation. And we traveled to happy places together with SecBoy. Of course, one cannot edit a book about MSMEs without visiting them. This started our learning and fulfilling journeys with SecBoy and Maret to General Santos and Iloilo, plus a side trip to Marikina. In Marikina, we met Denver Chicano, a nurse in the burns unit of PGH, and his wife, Axel Pauline, at their clinic. Denver invented the Coco Patch, a healing patch made of the same ingredients as Nata de Coco. The Coco Patch treats wounds faster, and we saw photos of how the victims looked much better after applying the patches. DOST provided them with assistance to purchase more ingredients and sign up with a toll manufacturing facility. In Gensan, we met Dr. Mimi Sison Plamiano of Greenland's Agritech, which grows tissue-cultured banana plant seedlings. With the assistance of DOST, she was able to grow more seedlings inside facilities with controlled conditions. We also met Fred Fredeluces of Green Topics, a coffee roasting and processing operation. Green Topics helps the Balaan tribe farmers by buying coffee beans directly from them to turn into roasted coffee. We then went to Iloilo and met Annabel Caro of Telmis Dried Fish, RJ Havelosa of RG's Butterscotch, and Joby Arandela, a former NASA programmer who came home to set up a cooperative called Zidopa, specializing in organic rice. With the help of DOST, all three entities were able to upgrade their quality and productivity. Sa pilapil ng rice fields ng Zidopa ay nadapa si SecBoy at nabasa ang puwet. But being a hands-on workaholic scientist, SecBoy just asked for tissue to wipe his back and we went back to work. If all government officials were as hands-on as SecBoy, we'd be a very progressive nation. I was amazed at the talent and passion of all these entrepreneurs and would like to thank the DOST and SecBoy for helping them fulfill their dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure and esteem that I present to you Secretary Fortunato de la Peña and Maret Poliosco Bautista.
Thank you very much, Rubina. Thank you for not mentioning another incident that would be embarrassing. Naiwan ako ng aeroplano. But I would like to request now our staff to show the 4 slides that I have. Actually, the subject matter of my portion will be technology and entrepreneurship. And this is shown in the next 4 slides. Next slide, please. So I don't know whether it is legible, but the first slide actually enumerates the different technology assistance to micro, small, and medium enterprises because it is important to help them through technology to be able to grow. The first item there in the list is the service of doing an assessment of their existing operations, their facilities, and systems. DOST started with the Manufacturing Productivity Extension Program, or MPEX program, way back during the time of Secretary Poliosco in 1990. And this service has been continuing. It is actually the starting point to determine what the enterprise needs in terms of technology. The second item in the list is the identification of appropriate and updated technologies which can improve productivity, expand capacity, enable product diversification. And this is done with the help of the regional and provincial offices of DOST with technical assistance from the research and development institutes and partners. The third in the list would be the offering of technical services, such as those in packaging, in quality assurance, productivity consultancy, and even product development and prototyping. Next slide, please. Still continuing on the technology assistance to MSMEs, one important assistance to them is training. On the part of the owner of the enterprise, they are given the so-called technology-based enterprise management training and also the use of new or improved IR 4.0 technologies, okay? And of course, good manufacturing practices. The fifth technology assistance kind would be this one involves money from DOST or from any other sponsor, the acquisition of hardware, software, technology for enterprise upgrading. And actually the amount that is being advanced to them is being repaid in very, shall we say, soft terms. The next item that is also actually a technology assistance to MSMEs would be in terms of intellectual property protection. We make sure that the innovations that they have are protected, whether in terms of patents, utility models, industrial designs, or copyright. Next slide, please. We also have technology assistance through R&D for the enterprises. For example, when the Science for Change program of DOST was introduced, there is a component called Cradle, which is collaborating research and development to leverage the Philippine economy. It is a joint R&D between an enterprise and an R&D organization or university. The next one is still on doing R&D, and this one is also part of the Science for Change program of DOST. They can acquire R&D equipment, hardware and software, and the enterprise can do the R&D themselves. Okay, here they have to repay back what is advanced to them in terms of the amounts that are used to acquire equipment, hardware, and software. The next item in the list of technology assistance to MSMEs will be the so-called technology commercialization. And we have the DOST Technology Application and Promotion Institute programs for this, like translating the results of R&D into something that can be marketed. Or the DOST arranges the so-called technology transfer agreements so that they can use a technology developed by somebody else with payment of licensing fees. The last item in that slide is actually the assistance given by government funding institutions or GFIs. They have special programs actually for inventions and innovations. Now, the next two slides is assistance to so-called technology-based startups. Those that I have mentioned in the last two slides are for those that are already existing. But there can also be technology assistance for those that are technology-based startups. And these are in the forms of the following: the technology business incubation. The second one will be in terms of assisting communities in having livelihood enterprises that are technology-based. And of course, there is now a program that is especially designed for returning overseas Filipino workers who wants to have technology-based startups. We call it iForward PH, or Innovations for Filipinos Working Distantly from the Philippines. There is also assistance to technology-based startups, and the startups can be actually enterprises operated or assisted by LGUs. Okay. Today, for example, we have ongoing, shall we say, programs, and one of our vice presidents is actively involved here in the province of Leyte, the assistance to LGU-led technology-based enterprises. And lastly, and this is, I think, what Maret will speak about, both the incubation part and the spin-offs, publicly supported R&D that results into new products or technologies which are commercialized by the researchers themselves are also assisted. So I will not deal on detail on each of these, but I just would like to mention that the first book written, Science for Success, was done only by Ms. Maret Poliosco Bautista and Robina Gokongweipe, and they have a very good outline in presenting the different companies that they have visited. It actually led into 10 lessons, a lesson on what research and development can do for our MSMEs, a lesson on what innovation and creativity can do in their operations, a lesson about quality and conformity to international standards, a lesson on effective marketing and communications, a lesson on the use of appropriate technology, a lesson on productivity and competitiveness, a lesson in investing in human capital, a lesson on risk management, a lesson on collaboration, and a lesson for the people. Actually, these were done by going through the MSMEs that they have visited, and then drawing out conclusions on what they observed into the so-called 10 lessons to help MSMEs. So I will now turn over the presentation to Ms. Maret Poliosco Bautista.
Hello, distinguished guests, Dr. Dayan Ignacio, and the officers and members of PhilAAST, and the awardees. Good morning. Congratulations on your 71st National Assembly. You know, it's so difficult to talk after a very successful and famous Taipan and a honorable and well-loved cabinet secretary. But my partner in crime and my friend of 44 years and my fellow UP basketball team fan, made such a natural and funny introduction. So it made me less nervous to speak before you. You could imagine the fun we have during our trips together. Okay, you heard my co-author, Robina, talk about our memorable experiences and learnings while writing our first book, Science for Success, the Green Book. Secretary Boy, on the other hand, touched on the various assistance that the DOST extends to entrepreneurs engaged in SNT-based enterprises. And also the 10 important lessons we have imparted to the students, MSMEs, and startups based on our experiences of running our own businesses. I am tasked to share the highlights of our second book, Science for Innovation, the Orange Book. In Science for Innovation, we talked about technology business incubators or TBIs. Unfortunately, we couldn't go visit the TBIs because the pandemic happened. But we were able to conduct Zoom interviews with our resource speakers, local and abroad. So it was interesting to find out that our very first TBI in the country was established in the 1980s. Sadly, we were not able to pick up the phenomenal growth of the TBIs all over the world because of the inconsistent support and the lack of collaboration between government and all sectors. TBIs were again given special attention by DOST under Secretary Boy de la Peña. We covered local TBIs, university-based TBIs, and foreign privately held TBIs and foreign TBIs managed by Filipinos. We learned that France President Emmanuel Macron was so dead serious in putting France ahead of the innovation race, even making it as a national priority. The entire country of France was in fact a TBI. They attracted the best and the brightest entrepreneurs from all over the world by providing so many incentives for these companies to locate in France. A cabinet ministry was in fact even created for this. The French government paved the way for entrepreneurs to have access to large global markets and finance, even negotiating on their behalf. The program called Le French Tech is so successful and has produced 18 unicorns so far. And it's so interesting to know that it was headed by a young Filipina, Kat Borlongan. In my newsfeed this morning, I read that the late Queen Elizabeth is also an SNT advocate embracing digital technology, early on using Twitter and Instagram to communicate with her subjects worldwide. We were also impressed with the Miriam College, in the slide, TBI, which is also supported by DOST. Their youngest incubatee is a group of grade 9 students. Imagine that. These are 14, 15-year-old students already with an entrepreneurial mindset. So the TBIs from the regions are equally progressive. We covered TBIs from state universities in Batangas, Isabela, Central Luzon, Cebu, Cagayan de Oro, Iligan, UPLB, with locators specializing in industries and resources endemic to the region, thus spurring regional growth. So there are the examples of the TBIs we covered. The book highlights the following. First, the critical role of technology and entrepreneurship in national development. Second, the rise of university-based TBIs in the regions, which were driven by a need to help solve real-world problems using technology-based solutions and backed by solid academic and scientific research. Third, the importance of TBIs in helping budding entrepreneurs take their ventures to the next level. And we also presented examples of successful startups that underwent incubation hoping to inspire more people, especially the students, to consider becoming entrepreneurs and go through the incubation process. So, what are the next steps? The country has already the basic ingredients to successfully pursue our S&T development goals through entrepreneurship. But we still have a lot of work to do. We need a multidisciplinary curriculum to include the development of entrepreneurial skills to supplement basic professional skills. We should cultivate among our students innovation, critical thinking, creativity, and managed risk-taking. We at the CL Foliosco Group established the Dr. Seferino L. Foliosco Innovationeering Lab at UP Los Baños, hoping to nurture the entrepreneurial spirit among the students and embolden them to aim higher. One of the noted incubators and accelerators is the Gokongwei Group's JG Dev, helping tech startups with founders who have the right entrepreneurial mindset, are passionate, excellent in execution, and have high integrity. Within our own group of companies, we established the Knowledge Center, where we incubate new ideas, new products, new systems, new markets, systems improvement coming from our employees. Everyone is encouraged to contribute, and they are rewarded for every successful implementation. In relation to this, we need to update educational curricula regularly. Schools should continue to identify new knowledge, trends, and emerging skills to maintain the competitiveness of our country's labor force. To quote Australia's former Prime Minister, Ms. Julia Gillard, our future growth relies on the competitiveness and innovation, skills and productivity, and this in turn rely on the education of our people. Lastly, we must coordinate, integrate, and apply the cluster approach where all parts of the industry value chain and the members of the ecosystem are included in the organization, planning, and implementation of all entrepreneurship-related programs. Based on our experience, our companies are organized into clusters. We have the trading, agriculture, finance, manufacturing, food cluster, among others. We collaborate with the different clusters to understand our customers' needs and come up with the best solutions, products, and services they need. We also have our own business incubator where we provide capital, free facilities, mentoring, to grow our startups. As a mentor and fellow entrepreneur myself, there is no better fulfillment than seeing small entrepreneurs successfully scale their business to a bigger, more profitable, and sustainable company. So thank you. We look forward to all your groundbreaking scientific research and discoveries that can help solve real-life problems and can be turned into successful business opportunities, as Secretary Salidum said. Let us now get back to Secretary Boy de la Peña to synthesize the three authors' talk. Thank you.
Well, very briefly, I think it is very important first to understand the situation of our MSMEs to be able to determine what are the priority interventions that must be carried out. And I have already stated the different programs that the government is doing. Of course, I enumerated mostly the DOST programs, but there are also assistance programs coming from other line agencies. The DTI, for example, has set up their Fab Labs and shared the facilities. DA is now providing funds to construct buildings that can be used for as for common service facilities. Of course, I always jokingly say they come in when the OST has already made them successful. But really, I think it's very important for all the agencies to help. And the other thing, of course, is that of creating new enterprises. It is not enough that we assist our existing enterprises. It's very important to create new ones. And not only the ordinary new ones, we have to create new ones that are innovative, that are dealing with highly competitive products and technologies. And this is, I think, what was discussed in incubation. What Maret did not mention is the possibility of also of connecting them to fund sources, okay? Because it is very important for startups. So with all of this and with the pronouncements of DOST through Secretary Solidum that technology entrepreneurship is a very high priority in DOST, not only in the area of agriculture industry, but also in the area of health, because there are so many opportunities in health, okay, for technology-based entrepreneurship. So I think this is all. Pasensya na kayo. Good afternoon na po sa inyong lahat. Hindi na good morning.
Thank you, Secretary Boy, Ms. Maret, and of course, Ms. Robina for that paper. Now, in the interest of time, we'll go to the reactions of our esteemed partners from the scientists and the private sector. But we will hear first the reaction from the President of the National Academy of Science and Technology, Academician Rodora V. Azanza. Dr. Azanza is a professor of the Marine Science Institute, University of the Philippines, Diliman, and president of the National Academy of Science and Technology. She has served the university in various positions, including being the first woman dean of the College of Science, Diliman. For her contributions to the biology and farming of seaweeds, which are sources of carrageenan, she became one of the members for 7 years of the International Seaweed Association Council, a rare post occupied by a woman. May we now hear Dr. Azanza.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm very sorry I have to ask to be the first reactor. I have to leave because I'm preparing for my trip next week to join the ASEAN workshop on circular economy in the region. Maraming salamat sa mga organizers for inviting me to this very important convention. This is the 71st PhilAAST meeting, and with a very important and very urgent, very relevant and timely topic. Let me congratulate the officers, Dr. Ignacio, Dr. De La Paz, Dr. Bora, and of course, Dr. Fortunato de la Peña, who is supposed to be, I think is going to be the eternal advisor of PhilAAST. Also, I'd like to congratulate the awardees. I did not name them all, and I would like to mention that I was a 2005 Gregorio Zara awardee, one of the awards which I cherish and honor until the present. I would like to give my reactions first to the paper delivered by Academician Rasco. It was excellent, and it was it included the NAS vision for food systems, and of course he emphasized the need to consider food security in a larger context, meaning considering the other equally important dimensions, the socio-cultural and the environmental aspects. I would like to mention that the need to diversify the meal of the Filipinos should be emphasized in the next few activities in relation to food systems or food security. As pointed out by Academician Rasco, we have become less diverse in our food choices. We have been rice-centric, and some might dare say that we are rice addicts. So, and maybe most of the Asians are quite rice addicts. And let me mention that there is a common concept in ecology. When you know ecology, we consider the interrelationships of living and non-living and the interrelationships of organisms. Diversity leads to stability in an ecosystem. So meaning especially in natural ecosystem. But in agricultural systems, we tend to have monocultures, and monocultures tend to be temporary, meaning there is a lifespan for many culture systems. Take, for example, the seaweed culture in Canada that was for many years providing carrageenan to the world. It collapsed. And there was a seaweed species that was developed, and the crop was developed with the help of the Filipinos, and so therefore the carrageenan industry did not collapse. So therefore, as pointed out by Academician Rasco, we need to consider science, technology, and innovation, not only to conserve and make our natural systems sustainable, but also our artificial systems that would be providing for our food security to be more sustainable and resilient. We need to diversify, not only in terms of the consumption of the Filipinos, but also in the production system. And this would be transgenerational, as pointed out by Academician Rasco. So short-term and mid-term plans, action plans are important to realize what we need right away to start the transformation, to go ahead with the food security, the impossible dream that we would like to attain, but more so the long-term plan that we need to be able to have this transformation. Now, let me go to the other talks. I would like to congratulate Governor Tamayo for the impressive governance that they are doing in the province that considered ecotourism and many others. And I would like to point out that it seems that they are accumulating a lot of data and information from the systems that they are doing. And I hope that they can be given assistance in terms of the analysis of this data so that they can improve their governance. And as pointed out also by the three other speakers who talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, this analytics on the data and information on everything that they are considering for their governance should be used for innovations for improved governance. Now, I am overwhelmed and very happy that Dr. Fortunato de la Peña co-authored with two partners from the industry, Ms. Fagliosco and Ms. Gokong Weipe. And they have shown the importance of the assistance and the projects of the DOST that could help MSMEs and even the entire industry, whether you are in food or whatever, to really come up with innovations that could help our development based on science and technology. I agree that we have the wealth of young, creative Filipinos whose talents we need to use their potentials to be used for our sustainable and resilient development. So may I recommend that they have this dialogue or workshop with the Department of Education, not only to disseminate your these are very important books, Science for Innovation and science for success. They need to go down to the level of elementary, high school, and other institutional levels of our education, not only to the college level, but also if you can do something to talk with the Department of Education. So my congratulations and appreciation for your great work, the three authors on entrepreneurship. Now, lastly, I'd like to mention that the transformative changes really need critical, transdisciplinary, and future thinkings. And this has been the approach that was done in a very recent output of NAST, which was really stimulated by our former Secretary De La Peña, Pagtanaw 2050. And this has been shown very well by the speakers, like in the food and nutrition cluster, the strategy for food systems in the talk of Dr. Rasco, or academician Rasco. And these transformative actions should consider risks, opportunities, and we need to be reminded always of the holistic and integrated approach towards sustainable and resilient development. So in that particular document, the transformative actions need to be started now, as you have been pointing out, as what our speakers have been saying. And the immediate and distant preferred future, which is prosperous and inclusive archipelago with healthy and productive citizens, can be attained, hopefully, using our short-term and mid-term and long-term plans and foresighting and foresights. So again, thank you for inviting me. I really wanted to leave early, but I cannot help but listen to the other speakers and leave my comments if ever they can be useful. Maraming salamat, and again, congratulations to the organizers, the speakers, and the winners for this year's PhilAAST awards. Maraming salamat.
Listen to the reactor from the private sector. May I introduce Mr. Philip L. Ong, Chairman of the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food Incorporated. And Mr. Ong is the current president of Sante Feeds Corporation, a company that manufactures feeds for the aquaculture and for livestock, and of Manila Cordage Company, where he is also a director. He also sits in the governing council of Picard DOST. He finished management engineering from Ateneo de Manila University, after which he took a postgraduate course in strategic business economics at the University of Asia and the Pacific. He also took up a certificate course in sustainable aquaculture in the University of St. Andrews in the United Kingdom. Mr. Ong?
Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings to the officers and directors of the Philippine Association of Applied Sciences and Technology. Advancements. I'm glad I'm here to entertain you for lunch. Since you'll be primarily occupied with your food, I think my comments will hopefully add some flavor to your feast. I'm glad that I've worked with the DOST for quite a number of years and through several administrations, no? And I have seen how from the laboratories and the institutions of education, research and learnings, that slowly the transformation of moving into industry, into application has become the forefront of our secretaries and of the agency of the OST. No? One of the greatest accomplishments, I think, of Secretary Boy de la Peña has been the clustering of institutions into particular themes and products, which are industry related. And that brings me to my reaction to our food industry. When Dr. Rasco talked about the urgency of food security and of how our food system seems to be broken, I am led to think that we are looking at the dark side or the faulty side of our food system. In fact, our food system is working. If we didn't have all the accumulation of knowledge of people who are on the ground working, applying the right fertilizers, the right seeds, the right logistics, the right processing systems, we would not be able to have all these pumpkin soups on our tables, the rice that will be delivered to your plates from the farmers that were farming it, mostly in South Cotabato, believe it or not. I think that enhancement, improvements have to be done. Changes, transformation in taste can be made, but it does not take a revolution. It takes small innovations. And these small innovations rightfully starts at the innovation centers that you have in each and every universities. I would think that the inflation created by the Ukraine war, in a way, wakes up the world and wakes up the Philippines. It makes us understand that, for example, our bananas can continue to feed the world. It makes us understand that rice may be lacking, but we have many other options in the Philippines that allows, for example, fast foods to deliver a 45 peso meal to every Filipino at an instant. So we are working in a world full of challenges, but also full of opportunities. And these opportunities call on us to collaborate. I think that is the beauty of the innovation centers that we are putting up, because it allows many disciplines to collaborate. Many of our knowledge and research are usable, but how does it reach the market? There are components of engineering, components of marketing, components of communications, which are very lacking in the expertise that are housed within our learning institutions. We have to open up our knowledge and not build silos. In a way, I am a little bit wary of the IP thrust or the IP departments that we have created in all the universities. It has created a competition among the organizations to capture the knowledge and keep it in a silo. In a way, we need to break this open, share. Many things are available on the internet. Surprisingly, many of the products that we are working on is even available on Lazada. Who are the people who will succeed? They are the people who can cooperate well, communicate well, brand well, market well. Think of the guy who was able to create a sugar-filled liquid called a soft drink and send it to every corner of the world. Can't we do that? Maybe banana, maybe adlay, maybe even pili can reach that scale. Right now, I'm working with a small multi-purpose cooperative in Legazpi, trying to extract oil from different parts of the pili, not just the nut, but also the pulp and also the tree itself. These small projects benefit hundreds of households who are creating end products and branding them. But I'm so heartened that the OST, the BUCAF, the Bicol University, even the DTI and DA have pitched in to help this project. Collaboration, that in the end is the most important thing if we are to drive all this advancement of science and technology applications. I believe that today is a good day to start. It's a good day to start opening up and driving this innovation collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your insight. We really appreciate that. Next, another reaction from the private sector. We will call on Mr. Ray Anthony Rojas Chua III. He joined the Philippine government in 2007 as the chairman of the Commission on Information and Communications Technology. Prior to his appointment, he was president of ARCYA Glass Corporation, a glass manufacturing company, and vice president and assistant general manager of Pacific Land and Building Corporation, a property development and management company. May we call on now may we call on Mr. Ray Rojas Chua for his insight on the speeches that were made this morning.
Secretary Reynaldo Solidum, I understand he was here earlier. Former Secretary Fortunato Boy de la Peña, Dr. Diane Ignacio, President of PhilAAST, distinguished speakers, fellow reactors, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry is very honored to be invited as one of the reactors at this 71st National Convention of the PhilAAST. Now, unfortunately, our president, Mr. Henry Limbonyong, couldn't make it, so I hope you accept a substitute. So I'll just want to, I guess, react to the presentations. So first, I'd like to congratulate the NASD for the vision on the Philippine food system. I understand they won numerous awards, even a silver medal at the Food Olympics. So pareho pala kayo kay Heidelin Diaz. Although si Heidelin nanalo na ng gold. So hopefully next time you win gold also. Now, Dr. Rasco also mentioned that this was not really highlighted in the media, and I agree because I never heard of it. I never heard of this achievement. And listening to the presentation today, I can see why they won. It is fantastic the way they put the consumer at the center of the discussion on food security. And I agree that the challenge is really influencing the food choices of the consumer. And you know, it's a challenge. Like there's talk about reducing the consumption of rice and sugar, which is probably the favorites of Filipinos, right? I myself, at the height of pandemic last year, I lost 50 pounds by cutting off those two things. Huwag niyo na hanapin yung before picture. But and then the plans are fantastic. The plans laid out are fantastic. So education, feeding programs, focusing on the middle class, and even the Flex PhD app. These are all fantastic initiatives. Now, however, awareness is only part of the challenge. Another part of the challenge is affordability. So even though we convince people to eat healthier, can they afford it, right? Like, for example, rice. Rice is cheaper than proteins. Mas nakakabusog. Salmon is more expensive than liempo. Salad is more expensive than sisig. Organic food in general is more expensive than inorganic. Diba? So I do agree that the way it was presented is fantastic in terms of the consumer being the center, and we target all the different parts of the ecosystem. But if affordability is also an issue, then maybe the problem is even bigger. That means we have to raise the per capita income of Filipinos, and that is by pushing people to higher earning occupations, higher productivity occupations. And that is a job for the government in general in partnership with the private sector. But I do applaud the NAST for this aha moment of putting a different spin on food security and showing that it's not merely about food supply. Now, the second presentation by Governor Tamayo was very inspiring because we could see the role that governance can play in pushing for development and pushing for sustainability. Because sustainability is not an easy task. Even the advanced countries struggle with it. But as South Cotabato has shown, with proper governance, it can be achieved even by a smaller city, right? So it gives us hope. Like, for example, the Lake Holon, Lake Cebu becoming among the top sustainability destinations and being able to attract one of the largest investments in a solar power plant. These are amazing achievements. And this requires a special type of leadership and a special type of commitment because sustainability doesn't sell. Sustainability doesn't win votes. What does win votes? Dole outs. Ayuda. Posters everywhere. So it takes a special kind of leader to push for things like this that are invisible to the average person, but are necessary for the development of the country. And that's why I also applaud Governor Tamayo. And finally, on the third presentation, I'm so happy that the third presentation was done live because I'm sure you will agree that Sec Boy looks better in person than on video. It's my first time to meet Ms. Poliosco Bautista, so I'm also happy to see her in person. I think my biggest takeaway from the third presentation is that technology and entrepreneurship are interrelated. Like, technology can be used to help entrepreneurs take their businesses to the next level. At the same time, entrepreneurs are also the ones who will take the risk and push technology to develop even further. So I think they really have to work hand in hand for future development. And I agree with the findings of Ms. Poliosco Bautista that we have to ingrain the entrepreneurial spirit into our younger generation. Now, if you look at Filipinos in general, we are very entrepreneurial. If you can see the proliferation of MSMEs, diba? There's sari stores all over the place. There's tricycle, there's Jeep. Everyone wants to start their own thing. So there's an entrepreneurial spirit. We just need to capture it and bring it to higher value endeavors, right? And I think beyond just education, we have to encourage the multidisciplinary approach. So because we have engineers and we have entrepreneurs, but having both skill sets is still probably could use more push. So maybe having such an approach is going to help encourage more higher level entrepreneurs interested in kind of like higher technology businesses. Also, of course, a challenge of entrepreneurs is funding. We have a lot of great ideas, but unfortunately the funding is kind of limited. So I think, but if you think about it, there's also a lot of people who are willing to invest. People who don't know so much about technology but have money to invest. So I think creating an ecosystem where investors can invest in high potential technology-based businesses is probably going to be helpful to at least lower the risk for these entrepreneurs to start business. So I think it's clear from today's presentations that technology is going to play a very large part in terms of food security, in terms of governance, in terms of entrepreneurship. On the part of the Federation of Filipino Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry, aside from, of course, promoting the Filipino Chinese business community, we also have a lot of philanthropic programs, including our Barrio School program that has built 6,000 Barrio schools around the country to date, and also our medical missions. So we do have these initiatives, but one thing that we are looking forward to is explore the possibilities that we can possibly work with the scientific community to further those initiatives in those areas as well. Congratulations again to PhilAAST on your national convention, and we look forward to future partnerships.
Thank you very much. That was a very good reaction. It's also the reaction from the other speaker who preceded him. We appreciate very much. And also, Secretary Boy, you look good. Now I realize. Okay. Thank you for all the reactions. Now we come to the question and answer portion. Our moderator for this open forum is Dr. Benjamin Austria, PhilAAST Vice President for Geography and Earth Sciences Division. May we call on Dr. Austria.
Good afternoon, everybody. It was indeed a very entertaining reaction, and I congratulate and thank all the speakers and panel of reactors for sharing their expertise, wisdom, and insights on this very important topic of sustainable development and how science and technology could help us transform this help in the transformation of our country through sustainable development. So let us now take the opportunity to bring up any matters that you might want to clarify on all the talks. The first talk on food security, the second on governance, and the third on innovation. So the floor is now open. So I invite our viewers as well as those who are present in this hall to bring up any issues that you would like to take. So we saw that these are important topics, but they are all intertwined. Food security is intertwined with governance, and as pointed out earlier, we would like to further encourage entrepreneurship in higher value activities.
Dr. Austria.
Yun na lang.
Yes. No, I don't know who should answer this, but I do notice that we still have so many students going to the university instead of taking up jobs that will create the technicians, vocational. So naiisip ko, halimbawa, so many are graduating from engineering, so many are graduating from agriculture, and I'm just worried, how do we place them and how we can tap them so that we can move forward with so much talent. Ang gagaling naman nila, but then the opportunities are limited. Yun yung mga hinahire namin ngayon ng mga S&T fellows ng DOST. Actually, they're coming from abroad. Naghihintay lang sila ng opportunity na merong ma-create na mga positions dito. In the meantime, after their scholarship, which usually they get on their own abroad, naghahanap muna sila ng trabaho doon hanggang wala pa silang mapupuntahan dito. So, I don't know who can make a suggestion here. Natapos na ako ng 6 na taon sa DOST, kaya ayoko na isipin. Baka merong suggestions yung ating mga awardees, yung ating mga reactors. So, I don't know. Would you like to try, my dear friend?
Thank you, Sec Boy, for putting me on the spot. So yes, definitely it's a challenge to provide opportunities for our graduates, for our upcoming potential entrepreneurs, right? And I think it doesn't have a simple solution. Science and technology can play a part. Obviously, we need more graduates in the area of science and technology, which it's kind of gaining some popularity, but still falls behind a lot of the other possible occupations. So it really requires a full effort of the entire government and the private sector to push the country forward, so that focus on what we're good at as a country, focus on higher value services, focus on services that we can export, or products and services that we can export and make ourselves more competitive internationally. And it is in doing that we will have more opportunities at home, because we will be creating more companies, creating more jobs. But like I said, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It involves very long-term thinking. So it means long-term investments in education, long-term investments in infrastructure. And it's a challenge with the way our political setup is right now, with the 6-year terms, and everything is very short-sighted. So that is an ongoing challenge. So hopefully we will have leaders that have a longer-term vision and focus on maybe taking the bullet now, right? Making some sacrifices now for longer-term progress.
Thank you for this insight. Indeed, we need an environment that would encourage such long-term thinking as well as innovation. Because I remember a friend of mine whose daughter tried to put up a piggery in Novaliches, but without the environment to encourage, his daughter eventually gave up, because she found out that she had to get 30 signatures just to set up a backyard piggery. And so it was a small-scale effort. So indeed, we are now trying to have a better environment for such. Yes, please.
Yeah. Just a very practical question, and it can be addressed to anyone, since we were talking about food security. And they need to diversify, say, for example, because while we are rice-eating people, most Asians, but sorry. Saan ba camera? and we need to change certain kind of lifestyle, like siguro kakain na lang tayo ng kamote or any root crops that is possible. Pero the basic question is, it's embedded within a culture. So how do you mix these things together and where do we start from here? Although it takes one generation perhaps to be able to change this thing, but naisip ko lang, paano gagawin ito? Kasi like ever since we have been doing that. So how will you break a certain culture which is already existing so that there might be not much need in terms of rice anymore kung kulang na talaga tayo sa rice? Anyone can answer that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
I think it was best tackled by the first speaker who wanted to change the culture, food culture of our country.
Can you hear me?
Basically, siyempre, ang answer ko is from the science and technology approach na rin, although you're talking of culture. So for example, at the DOST's Food and Nutrition Research Institute, they're trying to come up, with the use of substitutes, pero embedded in the traditional food that are being taken. So when they started looking into the possibility of using banana as a substitute for wheat flour, or using cocoa flour as a substitute of wheat flour, that is already some kind of intervention without this changing the culture of eating pandesal, So yun ang ginawa nila. At the same time, siguro dahil meron din tayong mga ibang klase ng pagkain na gusto rin naman ng mga tao. Of course, medyo mas matagal i-prepare kaysa yung ikaw ay magsasaing lang, kaysa gagawa ka ng banana cake. Pero siguro yun yung challenge na pwedeng magawa through our educational system, or natatandaan ko kasi nung nag-aaral kami, ang merienda lang namin sa eskwelahan yan, kung minsan nilagang saging, o kaya naman maruya, puros iba't ibang version ng saging na saba. Pero nakakaraos naman, at saka sabi ko nga, ang daming pagkain dyan na ngayon parang nakalimutan na. I was surprised, for example, when I went to Cebu, they were still eating a lot of the breadfruit. I don't know how you call it, but in Tagalog we call it rimas. And I said this was the kind of snack that we were eating when we were young. Pero ngayon, you ask the children, they don't know anything about it anymore. So kung minsan siguro yung influence din ng fast food talagang medyo meron ding negative effects. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. I understand Dr. Rasco will be responding via Zoom.
Yes, I wonder if you can hear me. Hello?
Muted.
Hindi naka-mute. Let me check my audio. Can you hear me now?
Yes, louder.
Okay. Well, yung comment about kamote, or increasing consumption of rice, we need to recall that yung consumption natin ng rice has not really been that high. Sa ngayon kasi 120 kilos per capita per year. But about 30 years ago, it was only 90. So at that time, we were eating other staples, and that includes kamote. Now, ang problema kasi sa kamote, merong yung parang bias tayo na pag sinabi mong kamote, nangangamote yung bata. So, parang there is that cultural bias. But science can deal with this. And I'm referring to processing it into a form that is more acceptable. For example, you may be aware that one of the most expensive noodles in Korea and perhaps even in Japan is made from kamote. And while some of these are being sold here very, very expensive. So kung ma-process yan, it might be more acceptable. In the same manner, yung soju, which is a priced drink in Korea, is also made from kamote. So ang lesson is that if these traditional foods can be converted into a form that is more acceptable, then perhaps we can encourage higher consumption of these products. But if I may add, there was this comment earlier about my presentation showing the dark side. Well, I did not create the darkness. It's what the data shows. Our farmers and fishermen are the poorest in Philippine society. Our consumers are suffering. 4 out of the top 6 killer diseases in this country can be traced to the food we eat. And our environment is suffering. We spent a lot on irrigation. 70% of our diverted water is actually used for irrigating only one crop, and that's rice. So that's water that could have been used in households, in industry, in other crops, and even livestock and poultry. And I have not mentioned yung global warming impacts of rice production. Yung methane and nitrous oxide generated in the anaerobic environment of submerged rice culture is actually contributing substantially to global warming. So, yes, we see darkness, but that's not something we created. It's something that the data shows. But on the bright side, siguro, we need darkness so that we will be persuaded to turn on the switch of the light. And finally, I appreciate yung comment ni Mr. Ong about yung pili, no? This is in line with our own suggestion to diversify. Kasi kung ang pili mo ay para sa making of sweets and desserts, very limited yung income potential. But if you look at other products like oil and even yung resin from the pili tree, yung mga lalaking pili na hindi naman nagbubunga, ay pwede sigurong pagkuna ng resin. That's a very expensive product, and that's used for making perfumes and other similar products. Yun namang comment ni Mr. Chua about yung expensive salmon. Of course, when we say diversify, we are not really referring to salmon. Of course, it's good to have salmon once in a while, but protein can be sourced from other products. Tilapia is very cheap, and mungo is also very cheap, and you get the same nutrients, protein. That's the beauty of diversity, and that's why we are really pushing diversity. It gives you a lot of choices. Kung ang kaya mo ay 20 peso meal, then you will perhaps prefer mungo and tilapia rather than salmon or salad. And for vegetables, you can eat saluyot malunggay, which are probably more nutritious than lettuce and cabbages. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. There is indeed much interest in food security. We have a question from one of our participants virtually from DWBL Juvie de Guzman. He asked, among awardees, who among them answered or gave the best solution on our Philippine food security? Place, what product can be a big help and a multiplier around the country? So I guess the awardees most related to this would be both the applied research awardee who is working on food, the extraction of materials from food, as well as our awardees in the agricultural sector.
Yes, actually, my field of expertise is more on the pharmaceutical research. So we are working on some crops that we can use as maybe a component of the food. Like, for example, the turmeric, which can be a supplement for the food processing, and other food that has a health benefit that we can get from. So I don't know, we are talking about here about food safety and security. So on our part, we can say that we support siguro yung health, sa health, no? More on food safety, saka food supplement. So yung aking kasing expertise is more on the, how will I say it? More on the agricultural crops that we can utilize to be a help for as a herbal supplement or herbal drug. So when it comes to food, I think we have to work with DA. For example, there is a lot of production of tomato, and we have to tap researcher on how we can work on utilizing excessive production of tomato to process it and preserve. So para meron tayong food security rin.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
And, I think during the presentation of the leads sponsor, we saw their efforts in improving our food security. There's also another question that's related. Do you have plans to connect with non-government organizations in order to supplement entrepreneurship, food security, and water resources initiatives? Many of these organizations, like the Rotary Club, have these items on their global service priority list. I guess this is a question directed to PhilAAST and its officers about plans to connect with other non-governmental organizations. I'm sure PhilAAST indeed would be ready to collaborate with many other organizations to help in this area.
Actually, during the last seminar series, I already indicated that PhilAAST needs to collaborate more with the private sector, with the industry people. And in fact, I was urging PhilAAST to get more members from the industry sector. As it is now, most of the members of PhilAAST are educators and researchers and scientists, but we have very few members from industry. And so this is also a call for our industry people who are interested in using technology for development to join us, okay? Because we believe that it's not only government that can solve all the problems. It is really partnership, and we would welcome our friends from industry to join. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's another question. This time, I think this is related to one of the, before we go to proceed with this.
Question, but some comment. We're talking of food security, but how do they counter the action of our Department of Agriculture that's always importing all things that can be produced in the Philippines? How can we counter that? And then the land that are being used for production are being converted to subdivisions to the point that some of these rich land are becoming subdivision and no more place for production. Like for example, salt. You have the beaches and it's converted to all resorts. So we now import a lot of salt. So how can we counter that? Because you cannot also blame some of the landowners who are owning these different lands in the different lucrative areas that are productive. How can we counter that? And I think it's the government that should really regulate this. But if the government themselves are importing a lot of things that can be produced in the Philippines, so what can the people do?
Yes,
I think Raymond Chua, he has already indicated what needs to be done, and this is really sacrificing popularity by making the needed policies and decisions. Kasi ang sabi nga niya, usually ang tendency sa atin, since there is only a 6-year term to show results, yung mga policies and decisions tend to be populist in nature and not really a long-term solution. So, Lydia, you have been here longer than us, so you should be able to answer those questions.
Thank you. Indeed, it's a very complex problem, and as we mentioned earlier, all these issues are interrelated, and we hope to contribute a little bit in solving this. There's another question that's related to one of the webinar series on energy security. There's a question here. Are there plans or talks for our Bataan nuclear plant to be open? Yes.
Okay, I'll try to answer it. I'm Lucy Labat from the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute. Well, there has been some talks, and in fact, in the Congress, they made a special committee headed by Congressman Cuangco to create a committee on nuclear energy specifically, not only a committee on energy, but nuclear energy. And we have several studies already whether we can resurrect our Bataan nuclear power plant. It's feasible based on the Korean studies who came over. But of course, there is issues on acceptability. Definitely, if we have nuclear power plants, I'm one of those who are promoting it because it will decrease our, price of energy power here. But yes, there are talks already. In fact, I think during the SONA of BBM, he mentioned that also to look into the possibility of opening up the Bataan nuclear power plant. But it's still a question at the moment. Thank you.
And yeah, it's been such a lively discussion. Are there any other concerns, reactions, questions? There are none. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Austria, for the open forum. Now, I'd like to give our certificate of appreciation to speakers and to our actors. May we call on Bora, Dr. Briones, to award the certificate of appreciation. Dr. Aya, called here for the awarding of the certificate of appreciation to our speakers, very good speakers, as well as qualified actors. Sino magbabasa? Dito na ako.
Thank you very much to all our speakers and to all our reactors. So the Philippine Association of the Advancement of Science awards the Certificate of Appreciation to academician Eufemio L. Rasco Jr. for sharing his knowledge and expertise as resource speaker during the 71st PhilAAST Annual Convention held on September 9, 2022 at the Millennium Salon, Manila Hotel, Philippines. Signed, Annabel V. Briones, co-chair 71st PhilAAST National Convention. And signed, Reynaldo V. Bora, chair 71st PhilAAST Annual Convention. And signed, Dr. Diana L. Ignacio, President, PhilAAST. Okay, that's for Dr. Rasco. Maraming salamat po, Academician Rasco. The same certificate goes to Governor Reynaldo S. Tamayo for sharing his knowledge and expertise as resource person to this 71st convention, or signed by Dr. Briones and signed by Dr. Ibora, as well as signed by yours truly, Diane Ignacio. Maraming salamat po, Governor Tamayo. The same certificate of appreciation goes to Professor Fortunato T. de la Peña for sharing his knowledge and expertise as resource speaker during the 71st PhilAAST Convention held on September 9, 2022 at the Millennium Salon, Manila Hotel, Philippines. Maraming salamat po, Secretary de la Peña. Ayan. Okay, thank you. The same certificate goes to